Every year on March 21st, people all around the world come together to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day by wearing brightly colored mismatched socks. Today, we're talking with Brook Daly to gain more insight into this day and what it means to the Down syndrome community. So Brooke, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi there, my name is Brook Daly. I'm from West Hartford, Connecticut. I am a disability advocate and the mother to two beautiful children, my daughter Rose, who's 12, and my son Finn, who is 9, and he has Down syndrome and autism.
So why was March 21st chosen for World Down Syndrome Day?
So March 21st was chosen because people with Down syndrome have 3 copies of the 21st chromosome. So you and I, most people have 2. So March being the 3rd month, they thought it would be a clever take on representing 3 copies of the 21st chromosome. So that's why they chose that particular day. So it's the same day every year.
That makes sense now that we know why.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that, how did Rock Your Socks and that awareness come about?
So years ago, one of the national Down syndrome organizations, I think, was trying to think of different ways to celebrate and raise awareness on that day. And socks actually look like chromosomes, or chromosomes look like socks. So they thought, what a great idea to have something that's fun to do for the community and kids with socks. And that's where the idea of Rock Your Socks came about.
It's so fun to speak with someone who knows the reasons why this is happening and why socks were chosen and what the connection is.
Right. It's funny. It's if you were to look at a genetic test, when the geneticist shows you the picture of all the different chromosomes, they'll highlight the 21st one and you'll see 3 copies, but they do all look like little different colorful socks, and that's where the idea came from.
That's great. So, and the goal with wearing the brightly colored mismatched socks?
Right. So the goal is, well, first of all, just to have fun, right? But it's also to start the conversation. So when you wear your bright colored or mismatched socks and people ask, hey, what are you wearing those for? It's to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day. Well, what is that? What do socks have to do with Down syndrome? And so then that's kind of a segue into the conversation about chromosomes and talking about Down syndrome awareness and acceptance in general.
That was a very great idea for them. It is a great conversation starter. I know I always, when I see brightly colored socks, I always mention it to someone and like, oh, you have dogs on your socks. That's great.
Right.
Like, tell me about it.
And I also say to people too, it's, yes, we do it at all the different schools, which is wonderful, but it's not just for kids. That we have plenty of adults that participate as well. So we, highly encourage people at work, at the gym, even if you work from home, to please share in the fun. And we love when people post pictures of their different types of socks on social media. It's really fun to see how creative people are.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know earlier you mentioned that your son has Down syndrome. How has your life been impacted by Down syndrome?
So I would say initially, when we found out that Finn was going to have Down syndrome, it was very scary, frankly, because my husband and I did not grow up with anyone who was disabled. Neither of us knew anyone with Down syndrome. So it was definitely eye-opening and scary at first. But I tell you, these kids are just so wonderful and so sweet, just like most children. and they taught us things that we never thought we would learn, as far as being more kind and patient, and just things that I never would have expected. But he's been such a blessing to our family, and it's been really eye-opening, and it's been lovely to become part of this community. I feel like before we had Finn, obviously there were people around that have Down syndrome, but we were never involved, never really knew anything about this community at all. So it's really been a blessing.
And that's wonderful that you were able to find a community and become involved with them.
Yes.
So what are some challenges you might experience, or that you and your son have faced, that some people might not consider, not being in that community?
So I would say, as far as Finn goes, the challenges for him is Down syndrome affects everyone differently, but for the most part, people with Down syndrome do have issues with low muscle tone, which affects pretty much everything that Finn does, from him being able to walk to him being able to talk, things that you and I probably take for granted that are very difficult for him. So as a result, Finn has to participate in a lot of therapy. We're very lucky that we're in a wonderful school district here, and he is able to get occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. He gets all of those things right at school, which is wonderful. We also get some extra therapy outside of school as well. So that, that can be challenging at times. And it's not that he's not capable of doing things. It just may take him some extra time. And so the challenge for me as a parent is just being able to balance all those appointments, as well as, having to at times help educate people and help them understand that although he's different from your children, there's also a lot of similarities.
So moving through some of those challenges, were there resources that you found were helpful when overcoming them and when working with these challenges?
Yes, definitely. So I think for any parent with a disability, whether it's Down syndrome or any other disability, it's like I had mentioned before, finding your community. So I would highly recommend to people to reach out to your local Down Syndrome Association. For us, it's the Down Syndrome Association of Connecticut, which is wonderful. They have lots of resources. I connected with lots of other mothers of children with Down syndrome, which was great, because it makes you feel like you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And you also want to make sure that you get accurate information. I know we're all so quick to just go to Google and look things up, but not everything's accurate or up to date. Things have really, really changed, especially over probably the last 20, 25 years. They've greatly changed with medical interventions and treatments and all types of things. I would also highly recommend looking up 2 national Down syndrome groups that I find have wonderful information, and they're very helpful as far as advocacy and up-to-date medical information. The first one is the National Down Syndrome Society. They're also known as NDSS. And then the second one that I would recommend to people is one called the Global Down Syndrome Foundation. They're both great organizations that have a wealth of knowledge on their websites.
That's fantastic. And so we'll put links to all of those resources you mentioned so that anyone who is coming and seeing this video can immediately have links to those resources. So for World Down Syndrome Day 2022, the Down Syndrome International is asking the question, what does inclusion mean? So what does inclusion mean to you and your family?
Well, I mean, simply put, inclusion means being included. And that means being included in your community, in your schools, in sports, all of those things. And I think it's important for parents to understand that for anyone who's probably, I would just say, over 35 maybe, I know my husband and I, we didn't grow up with kids like Finn in class with us, but my children are. And so it's really important to be included, and it's wonderful because this inclusion wasn't happening years ago. It just wasn't. So it's definitely a different world now, but I will say it's very different, I think, from state to state. So unfortunately, there's some parents that have to fight a lot harder to have their children with disabilities and or special needs in with their typical peers. And I honestly don't really understand that. I mean, it is 2022, so it really shouldn't, in theory, it shouldn't be a fight anymore, but it still is in some school districts, unfortunately. So I would just say, again, use your resources, reach out for help if you need it, but inclusion is so important because we just want Finn to be treated as a valuable member of society, just like any other child.
Agreed, and that's what every child should feel, that inclusion, no matter if they have a disability or if they don't, everyone should feel included. And It sounds like the school district you're in is very inclusive, so that is fantastic.
Yes.
So if you had about 1 minute to help educate us who aren't super involved in the community or who aren't aware what Down syndrome is, what would you like to share with us?
So I guess I would say for someone who, really isn't aware or doesn't know anyone with Down syndrome that, there's a lot of misconceptions, and but I just want you to know that Finn is just a little boy, probably like your little boy or your little girl, and that Down syndrome is a genetic condition. He is not sick. It's not a disease. It's not contagious. He just learns differently than maybe your children do, but that he is very lovable. He loves friends. He's very social, and that he just wants to be included, just like any other child.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story with us and helping all of us learn more about the challenges, about resources, and what inclusion means when it comes to Down syndrome and Down syndrome awareness. And we look forward to seeing you rock your socks on March 21st.
Thanks so much, Shelby. I appreciate it.